So, you want to change the world. Build something that makes people go, "Whoa." Problem is, you'll be flying blind. You build product on one end, results come out the other, but in between is a massive black hole. That's why we built Amplitude. It gives you a whole new understanding of customer behavior, predicts outcomes, and adapts experiences to drive world-changing results. You want to change the world? Now you can.
Thanks for tuning in to the Product-Led Festival. We really hope you're enjoying the festival so far, because we've got even more insights heading your way. All sessions are designed to be interactive and give you the chance to engage with our speakers, so come ready to get involved with your questions and comments. For all things product-led growth, don't forget to check out the Product-Led Alliance memberships at productledalliance.com. Sit back and enjoy the next session.
So today's topic is actionable inputs, the secret to product-led strategy execution. Just for some quick background, in my role at Amplitude, I end up doing, last year, I think I did maybe 130 or 140 workshops for teams, maybe with some of the folks watching. And one of the big lessons I took away from those workshops was the importance of teams having actionable inputs that they can influence. So you'll find teams that have amazing strategies and they talk about being product led and they talk about all these things that they're going to do. But if the teams don't have meaningful and actionable inputs, it's very, very difficult to execute. And it's very difficult to execute in a way that's friendly to experimentation. So that's kind of the focus of my talk today. Happy to talk you through some of the ideas. So the way I like to kind of address this issue at first, I want you to imagine that you work for a product that's a youth soccer coaching app. So imagine it's targeted at parents. Any parents who do youth sports know how much of a pain in the butt this is, but it basically allows you to efficiently, manage your kids and get a league going. So put yourself in the shoes of that product manager. And I want to give you 3 metric ideas for focusing your team. So one would be something like daily active users, so the count of active, parents who are doing this coaching. The next would be revenue. Okay, sounds good. Okay, revenue, that's great. But the next one is super youth soccer coaches. So this is a behavioral metric, right? It measures these parents who are efficiently managing their teams and raising money for their teams and promoting product to other coaches. They're doing all this good stuff. They're adding content. They're basically doing everything that the product strategy would hope they're doing. And I want you to imagine yourself, you have to pick one metric to help guide your team. And which one would you pick? So in doing this activity with folks, a lot of people pick super youth soccer coaches. Some people do pick revenue and some people do pick DAOs, and we can discuss why. But people seem drawn by super youth soccer coaches as a compelling idea because it indicates that the product strategy is working. Now, the problem with super youth soccer coaches, I always get tongue-tied when I'm trying to say that, is that by design, in a sense, that is a little out of reach. So if you think about super youth soccer coaches, we might imagine that kind of revenue and DAOs are, those aren't out of reach. We could certainly move revenue or move DAOs by running a different marketing campaign or moving a number of things. So those feel too leading. And kind of sustainable revenue, so maybe expansion revenue and stuff feels kind of lagging. They're both L's, so my plan failed there. You get the idea. So there's leading and lagging, leading and maybe lagging. But super youth soccer coaches is still a bit out of reach, and it would be very difficult to guide your team. So we don't really want to use revenue and DAOs. They're not very meaningful. They're more of like a vanity metric. We certainly can't wait around for sustained growth or revenue. So we've got a little bit of problem on our hands. Even if we're measuring the number of super youth soccer coaches, we still have a bit of a challenge here. And this is where inputs come in and why they are so insanely valuable in terms of executing on a strategy. And so I like to, there's many things we could say about Amazon, but there is this quote from 2010, which always blows my mind, where it's basically, I think Jeff Bezos is writing that the new senior leaders to Amazon are really amazed at how little they discuss financial results or debating projected financial outputs, that they take this stuff seriously. But it's by focusing our energy on controllable inputs to our business is the most effective way to maximize financial outputs over time. And then he goes on to describe this crazy statistic that of the 450 goals they had at the time that had, deliverables and owners and all sorts of stuff, 360 of them were directly impacting customer experience, and they only kind of use the word revenue 8 times, and they never use the words net income or gross profit margin. It really is about finding inputs that the teams can focus on. And so it's so important when you think about your teams to have that kind of autonomy over something that they can focus on. So what you find here is, we have sustained growth. We mentioned that. We have our super youth soccer coaches thing. And you've got this problem that really, really what we want is we want these teams to have an input to focus on. Yeah, this doesn't mean they can't use OKRs. It doesn't mean they can't have goals. It doesn't mean they can't, they have a bunch of blah work right here. Blah, 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 blah. They have all kinds of work. It doesn't mean that they don't have a roadmap or, a list of things that they want to try. But we really want to give this team something that it can focus on, almost like a miniature North Star, if you think about it, that they can be driving particular results. And so what we do in our workshops is help people find those metrics and think about them. So one tool, it seems very simple, is actually just framing a question. So for example, let's go back to our youth soccer coaches thing. You might frame a question to your team. Well, your ability to succeed in the mid to long term is a function of making youth sports fun, accessible, efficient, enjoyable. So that's kind of our North Star. That's our super soccer coaches idea, which is a function of our abilities. So you see how this phrase kind of sets up the inputs. And then you're able to get more actionable inputs. So there's a whole cluster here around time and efficiency, right? So coaches, the team, everyone needs to efficiently kind of get them into the product. There's a whole theme here around scheduling and coordination. So that's the ability to manage schedules effectively from anywhere, to get fast stats, to get data entry. And then there's the idea of communication. If you're running a sports program with kids, you spend most of your time communicating with parents and kids and sending notifications in a safe way, of course. And then here's the kicker for this company, which actually sort of exists. This is a riff on an existing product. Part of their idea is that they want to grow organically within the league and create these network effects, which obviously kind of go over and influence these other things that they're doing. And so the exercise to find the inputs for this company was, it was involved, but it wasn't a big stretch for them. But now we're starting to get to things that are more actionable. Now what we're doing is starting to get to a situation where you can have a team with all their blah work, and this team is laser focused. They're obsessed with effective communication for parents, right? So they're laser focused on this particular thing. And you might have a team laser focused on the scheduling and coordination aspects. So that's the continued usage of the product, the completeness of the data. You can imagine the metrics that we would form around scheduling and coordination. And then you have a team focused on this onboarding activity. Now, interestingly, when it comes to growth, one of the results of the activities of this team is they assumed that these network effects existed around growing across the league, but they did not have a growth team yet. They sort of assumed that these other roles would take on that responsibility, but no one was focused on the key flywheel for the business, which was this idea of growing across the league, referral, and growth. So that was one of the interesting byproducts of this activity. Now, I'll give you another example. This is an e-commerce example, but it should sort of reiterate the point here that if you follow e-commerce, you know that Amazon has a lock on a certain type of buying experience, which is called spear phishing, which is you go to Amazon and you just buy, and maybe you sign up for Prime. And to compete, what other specialty e-commerce plays need to do is they need to figure out how to have a twist. Is the twist certain products? Is it certain type of motion? So this is an actual company, but I changed the names here. So this company runs these successful flash sales that have a lot of organic involvement, healthy financials. This is their special sauce, is running these flash sales. Now, for any of the marketers on the call, we know that sort of e-commerce has some parts of the motion are pretty common and some are different. So one of the most important things is attracting people who have a high probability to become loyal customers, right? So there's attract and engage the new anglers. We need to satisfy their first time purchases, run these successful flash sales that have enthusiasm and urgency and are good at matching the people to the right stuff. And then finally, there's this loop around deepening engagement and referral and community. And that's, again, you have a bit of a flywheel that has to happen here to be successful. And obviously, you need to ship products to people on time successfully. So what you find here is you find another example of input. So, this company's path to sustainable growth and success is running these really addictive flash sales with unique products, which is a function of their ability to attract the right people, satisfy them around the value prop pretty quickly, run the flash sales, and then continue get a flywheel going around deepening engagement, referral, and loyalty and community. So that's another example of a set of inputs. So when you want to do this with your team, I find that different teams have a different mental model for what inputs are. Some of the more mathy types will call them inputs, which makes sense, but different people have a different mindset. So sometimes I say, well, what are the key ingredients, or what are the levers we can move, or what are the muscles we need, or what are the pieces of the puzzle? Or I use that phrase ability to a lot, which is capabilities. So you say our function of sustainable differentiated growth is a function of our ability to blank, which is a function of our ability to blank, 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 and blank. But what you get from these is that very few of them are solutions. So, even something like search, you could say, well, it's a function of great search. Well, we all know that search is a means to an end. Search is about finding relevant content, and there's many different ways you can find relevant content. So relevant content might be a better input than search, which is very solution focused as you're doing it. So just kind of backing up, what have we done here? First, you saw that the company sort of had a value hypothesis. They made that pretty clear. And then they went through this process of describing leading and lagging indicators. So they just kind of zeroing in on those inputs. They have a model then, which is really stable. It could last for a couple quarters or years. It's actionable because the teams are able to focus on inputs. And it really boils down the product strategy in a way that's very effective. So instead of a vague 3-bullet strategy deck and then a bunch of prescriptive roadmaps, build X, build Y, build Z, you're able to create a model that people are able to latch into. There's a very important element here around measurement that teams often get wrong. They sort of say, well, we need input metrics. That's what we need. And so they jump straight to the measurement before thinking about the ideas. So you can see in this fintech company, they started with powerful ideas around funding and wanting to be the primary bank and all the ways that they were going to get involved with customers. They grouped the ideas first, like funding, integration into financial life, understanding and acting, acquisition, reliability, reputation. Then they clarified the ideas. So importantly, very powerful ideas with imperfect measurement is better than perfect measures for not very powerful ideas, right? So they clarified the ideas: funding, efficiency, effectiveness, financial life integration, trust and reliability. And then as a final step, they added minimally viable measurement. So what is the best way at the moment do we have to sort of measure our effectiveness in these areas versus starting with measurement? A lot of teams are saying, well, what do we measure? I mean, let's just start there. But you really want to start with powerful ideas is the important part. So to kind of summarize with this, inputs are actionable. Unlike OKRs, they persist, right? OKRs are time-based goals, but the right inputs can persist quarter over quarter. Together with that North Star, they form a bit of a hypothesis. And it could be a flywheel. You could have little loops and stuff related to it. So that's okay if you do that. And then this idea of minimally viable measurement, which is what's the reasonable way we have at the moment to measure progress. I'll leave you one thought for just in case there's any questions, and leave a little bit of time. When you do this activity, you'll have some people in the room that say, do we have the perfect metric? Because we have to operationalize all our performance reviews, and we have to know, everyone needs to know if they're successful, and we need to keep score. That's this person on the right, and there's, sorry, on the left. And then you have people who are focused on the learning aspect. So if you find that your team slips into analysis paralysis when doing these inputs, and they get paralyzed, they can't decide on them, ask yourself whether your challenge at the moment is trying to think about measuring to learn versus kind of measuring to control, or measuring to sort of prove everything. And so if you find you're there to prove everything, there might be a chance that you need to create an environment where it's a little safer to fail, and more important, the focus is on learning versus on, checking every box for that. So if any of this was interesting to you, you can feel free to contact me on Twitter, or you could email me at Amplitude. Certainly Amplitude as a product helps, because once you have, it's very good for determining these inputs and then measuring them on an ongoing basis. So if you want to chat more about it, or see the product, or chat about North Star inputs, I'd be happy to do that.